Hi, my name is Leo Cox. Welcome to my channel. Zion National Park contains some of the most spectacular views that I have encountered in all my travels through the national parks in the U.S. It has two calling cards that are kind of on the bucket list for a lot of people, and it's one of the reasons that there's so much visitation there. It's gone from 2 million visitors per year back when this was originally shot, to more than 4.5 million people nowadays. The place is crowded. The two trails that we want to do, hiking the narrows of the Virgin River, that starts kind of like the title of the children's book of Where the Sidewalk Ends by Shel Silverstein. The sidewalk ends because there's no room, because that the river is wall-to-wall water, and you're going to be in that wall-to-wall water for the next 3 to 4 hours or longer, while you hike maybe 2.5 miles up as the canyon continues to get narrower and narrower, and you finally come to a side canyon coming in on your right hand side as you're going upstream, which is Orderville Canyon. If you have made it to Orderville Canyon, you can probably tell people, yes, I hiked the narrows, because at that point the canyon is only 20 to 25 feet wide, and who cares about a couple extra feet? Maybe it's someplace a little bit narrower, but when the walls are 1,000 feet high, you're not going to quibble about a couple feet of width. So from Orderville Canyon, you turn around and head back down, and the trip back down can be just as rewarding as the trip up. The light has changed. If you got daylight for the whole day, you're going to have some blue skies, some spectacular white clouds, red cliffs. It's going to be beautiful. If clouds form, again, there's a muted look to it. You can't miss it. The Virgin River hike is excellent. You'll love it. The other one is the Angel's Landing Trail. Angel's Landing Trail is actually part of the West Rim Trail. You're going to take the West Rim Trail up maybe 1,000 feet or so through Refrigerator Canyon, up Walter's Wiggles, and you'll find yourself at the Scout Lookout. Scout Lookout is a beautiful vantage point for looking up canyon. It's also kind of the assembly area for people who are doing the Angel's Landing section of the hike. Angel's Landing, by the way, is by permit only, and not a day too soon, because it was just too crowded before. It was dangerous. I thought it was dangerous because of the crowding. But if you don't have a permit, or if you were one who wasn't going to go up there anyhow, don't be disappointed, because you've got your view from Scout Lookout. And if you kind of look behind you, to your left, there's a continuation of the West Rim Trail. The West Rim Trail continues on up to the point where you can look down on Angel's Landing. Just hike up as far as you can go. When you get tired, you turn around and come on back down. It's a great way to do it. Mention it's the West Rim Trail. Because of crowding, don't forget there is an East Rim Trail, which is a totally different experience. It's not as, if you might call it, groomed, because there are some paved areas on the way up to Angel's Landing, but there's no pavement. It's just a trail to the East Rim Trail, which gets you the same elevation as the West Rim Trail. Beautiful views up canyon, down canyon. It's a totally different experience, and again, probably 10% of the people on the East Rim Trail, which is important when you've got a park that is crowded as it is. The other solutions are the shoulder seasons, especially fall. Fall is beautiful. In Zion, I've been there October and November, even early November. It can be 65, 70 degrees. Just a beautiful place to be. You can also get into the Kolob Canyon section, particularly again in the autumn colors. That canyon going up to the Kolob Arch. It's again, you have the colors of the seasonal changes up against the red rocks. It's to be considered, if at all, if you want to go to Zion. I'm not going to talk any more about it. I'm just going to go back. We're going to go ahead and look at the way it was when the visitation was just around 2 million people instead of the 4.6 million people that it was last year. So let's take a look.
A river flows through the semi-arid regions of the southwest corner of the state of Utah. It's not a large river, and by many measures, it's not an important waterway. Its name is the Virgin River. For centuries, the river has sent rock, water, and sand coursing down through cracks in 2,000-foot-thick sandstone rock monoliths to create one of the most beautiful and awe-inspiring canyons in the world. Since 1909, nearly 150,000 acres of this magnificent landscape have been preserved for the enjoyment of future generations within the borders of Zion National Park. For more than 200 million years, the area that is now Zion was a relatively flat depression in the Earth's surface. Mud, sand, and gravel from surrounding higher elevations washed down in layers. As time passed, shallow inland seas sculpted these elements. Subsequent layers of sands contained in massive sand dunes continued to compress the older material. The 2,000-foot high cliffs of Navajo sandstone that are the most prominent features of the park are the result of this action. Around 10 million years ago, the entire region began a slow rise, ultimately reaching thousands of feet above sea level. Internal pressures and weaker underlying layers allowed vertical cracks to develop in the massive sandstone blocks. These cracks separated rock masses, which later shaped towering monoliths, such as the Great White Throne. Water followed these cracks. The steep gradient between the uplifted plateau and the sea level allowed these waters to cut through the soft sandstone much more easily. The process continues today, as the Virgin River slices through the sandstone walls of the Narrows, then continues to carry its load of abrasive sediment through the rest of the ever-widening canyon. It was the flat bottomland of the canyon, blessed with a steady source of water from the river, that attracted human attention to this otherwise arid landscape. First, in traces of an Anasazi Pueblo culture that existed here 1,000 years ago. Then, in the recorded activities of Mormon settlers who farmed these bottomlands in the late 1800s. And finally, today, in the hundreds of thousands of visitors from all around the world that visit the park each year to marvel at the stunning canyon, shaped by millions of years of geological change. For many visitors, the trip to Zion is little more than a pleasant 6-mile drive along a tumbling river in the shadows of towering sandstone cliffs. Zion is that and so much more. Stop at the Visitor Center to learn about the scenes that await you. From the Kolob Canyon section at the far northwest corner of the park to slopes of checkerboard mesa near the east entrance, Zion is an ever-changing panorama, just waiting for your exploration. To truly appreciate the beauty and majesty of this wonderful preserve, visitors should plan on getting out of their cars and taking a pleasant hike to an overlook, a hidden canyon, or into the narrows of the Virgin River. Most trails at Zion feature vertical changes that can be somewhat intimidating for visitors not used to physical activity. Fortunately, most trails start at the bottom of the canyon, meaning you can simply hike up until you feel tired, then turn around for an easy walk back down to the trailhead. One trail that lets you drive most of the way to an overlook is the Canyon Overlook Trail. The trail leads to an overlook above the Great Arch at the head of Pine Creek Canyon. This trail begins across from the parking lot at the east end of the mile-long Zion Mount Carmel Tunnel on Utah Highway 9. The trail starts out up a series of irregular steps cut into the sandstone. The sand underfoot tends to be slippery, so watch your step and hold onto the handrail provided for your safety. The waters of Pine Creek have formed a narrow slot canyon just below the trail. The trail follows the edge of this canyon past strange stacked rock formations known as hoodoos. The trail continues beneath a shallow overhang into a small side canyon and the welcome shade provided by a grove of box elder trees before continuing up another shallow set of stairs toward the overlook. A short footbridge suspended above the edge of another side canyon takes you under an overhanging rock and around a bend into a long, shallow cave formed by a large overhanging rock. At the base of the cave, there is a seep line marked by a row of light green maidenhair fern. Surface water from the porous sandstone has worked its way down to a harder layer of shale, where it's forced laterally to the edge of the rock wall. Here, it disintegrates the surface rock, and subsequent erosion forms these overhangs. The trail continues upward over uneven sandstone surfaces beneath towering rock monoliths across Pine Creek Canyon. This trail has almost no shade protection, and water is highly recommended, particularly on summer days when the temperature often approaches or even exceeds 100 degrees. Soon the trail crosses a relatively wide sandy section where the hint of the broad vista soon to be encountered at the overlook begins to appear on the far horizon. At the end of the sandy portion of the path, the trail is forced into a narrow V-shaped rock crevice. Take your time, be careful, and watch your footing. You don't want to twist an ankle at a time like this. The trail ends at a fenced overlook above Pine Creek Canyon. In the distance, the main portion of Zion Canyon intersects with this side canyon, and beyond the main canyon lies the flat top of the West Temple, the irregular peaks of the beehives, and the massive shadowy surface of the streaked wall. One of the easiest and most popular trails in the park is the loop trail to the lower and middle Emerald Pools. This 2-mile round trip with an elevation change of just 150 feet begins at a parking lot across the park road from Zion Lodge. A bridge takes hikers across the river to an intersection that marks the beginning of the loop portion of the trail. Take the branch to the right, which leads directly to the lower pools. This portion of the trail is paved and climbs less than 70 feet. Disabled persons can utilize this lower trail with some assistance. The trail soon leaves the banks of the river and heads up into Heaps Canyon, where the pools are located. Much of the trail is shaded by a forest of small oak and box elder trees, making this an excellent choice for an afternoon hike on a hot summer day. 1/2 mile from the trailhead, a gap in the trees provides a view of a rocky ledge with small trickles of water flowing over the edge to cool green pools below. The amount of water flowing down from the head of the canyon varies from the small trickle that most visitors see during the dry summer months to the more substantial flows after thunderstorms or during runoff from winter snows. The trail continues to follow the curve of the rock wall, past streaked deposits of minerals deposited on the surface of the rock. From this point, which is just beyond the end of the paved section of the trail, hikers begin to head upward after passing behind more small waterfalls coming from the ledge above. The trail then ascends a series of short stair sections, including one through a gap between two sections of a massive boulder that must have crashed down from the wall above during a rockfall long before man set foot in this canyon. Within less than a quarter of a mile from the lower pools, the trail has now reached the area known as the middle pools. These small pools, with their reflections of towering sandstone walls across the canyon, lie near the edge of the cliff that rises above the lower pools. From here, the water falls some 75 feet to the rocks below. Extreme caution should be exercised here. The sandstone surface is very slippery. Do not approach the edge of the cliff. Maintain a close watch on small children. Above the middle pools, the trail to the upper pool was badly damaged by flooding in 1987. However, the 1-mile round trip scrambling over jumbled rocks takes hikers to the base of a 700-foot cliff. The bright colors of the deep blue Utah sky and the red-orange rock of the sandstone wall are accented by the wind-blown spray of a small waterfall emanating from an unseen canyon high above. The delicate spray forms a rainbow in the rocks at the edge of this idyllic upper pool. Return to the parking lot via the continuation of the loop from the middle pools. This higher portion of the loop affords stunning views across the canyon, including the shadowy Red Arch Mountain, a side view of the Great White Throne, and the distant flat top of the East Mesa. Now that you've experienced two of Zion's easy trails, it's time to try a trail with a 1,000-foot vertical elevation change. The trail to Hidden Canyon begins from the Weeping Rock parking lot. The short branch trail to the left leads to the dripping springs at Weeping Rock that you can stop at on the way down. The trail to Hidden Canyon begins with a series of long switchbacks up the east wall of Zion Canyon. Protection from the sun on this steep trail is minimal, so wear a hat and bring plenty of water. This trail gains 1,000 feet in just 1 mile, which means the average grade is just about 20%. Don't let the numbers discourage you. Take your time, rest frequently, and soon you will be up there where the towering walls disappear into the sky. Look back. See how far you've come already? Beyond the parking lot and the river, the Angel's Landing juts out into the floor of the canyon, while the main canyon walls continue to rise above the scene below. From here you can see a series of tighter switchbacks leading up towards the mouth of Hidden Canyon. These tighter switchbacks start just beyond the junction where the trail to Observation Point and the East Rim continues out across the face of the canyon wall to the left, ultimately winding its way to an overlook more than 1,000 feet higher than your present position. These tighter switchbacks also mark the point where the paved portion of the trail ends. The rest of this section of the trail is a series of rocky steps cut into the mountainside by early trail builders more than 50 years ago. Soon, the trail gets even more interesting. Chains were installed along the narrower portions of the trail that parallel sharp drop-offs. The problem is psychological, but the danger is real. Again, take your time, watch small children, and make sure of your footing on the uneven, sandy steps of the trail. The next challenge is more straightforward. Just a long flight of stone stairs along a corrugated sandstone wall leading to the choke point. Just before reaching the mouth of Hidden Canyon, hikers must traverse a narrow, uneven sandstone ledge above a sheer drop-off. There are no chains for physical or moral support, and many hikers turn back at this point. Everyone approaches the problem differently. Notice how one person reaches out to touch the wall for reassurance, while the other just walks along enjoying the view. After the ledge, Hidden Canyon itself is somewhat anticlimactic, ending in a small rockfall that blocks the sandy canyon bottom. Return via the same route while taking time for plenty of stops to enjoy the broad vistas available from these elevated viewpoints. Just before returning to the parking lot, take a few minutes to take an easy walk on the shaded path up to Weeping Rock. This short, steep paved trail lies at the foot of a sandstone cliff that features a spring emanating from the middle of a high rock wall. Centuries of erosion and weathering have formed a large alcove behind the dripping water, allowing visitors to observe the valley through a gentle water curtain. The water accumulates in a small pool below the alcove before moving down the valley to join the river far below. Zion's most popular trail begins from the parking lot at the end of the paved roadway at the Temple of Sinawava. There are two parts to this trail. The first portion is a pleasant 2-mile round trip on a paved path along the banks of the Virgin River. Near the beginning of the trail, the canyon is still wide enough to support groves of cottonwood and box elder trees. On one section of the path, a number of springs along the trail create an incongruous, lush, almost swamp-like setting. These springs are fed by water that is percolated down through the porous sandstone cliffs bordering the trail. Look carefully, and you may be able to spot a mule deer feeding on the succulent grasses in this bountiful marsh. The entire length of this trail is paved, and the total elevation change is minimal, but there are still short, relatively steep uphill sections that could make unassisted wheelchair travel difficult. As the trail progresses, the narrowing of the canyon continues. At one point, the path itself narrows as it passes beneath a large overhanging sandstone rock. Water seeping down the face of the porous rock along the trail provides a base for a wide variety of vegetation, from simple algae to complex flowering plants. The net result is a long, lush hanging garden paralleling this cliff-hugging trail, now situated some 30 feet above the riverbed. One last wide portion of the trail and one last uphill stretch past a final hanging garden takes hikers to the end of the gateway to the Narrows Trail. For the more adventurous individual, this is where the fun begins. The hike up the Virgin River Narrows to Orderville Canyon is a 3.5-mile round trip that takes a good half day to enjoy. Most of the time is spent in the river. Know and understand the dangers of this hike before attempting it. Information is posted daily on river conditions. Heed this information. There is a collection of walking sticks available at the start of the trail. Take one. High water, cold water, flash flooding, uneven footing over slippery unseen rocks below the water surface. All of these factors can add an element of danger to this most unique experience. Generally, the water is not deep. However, the rushing current and rounded river rocks underfoot make the walking stick a valuable tool for this trip. Not all of the river bottom is rocky. There are a few sandbars that make for easy walking and even allow your eye to be drawn upward to the majestic cliffs that rise above the narrow riverbed. A short distance from the start of the trail, look for a small stream of water silently rushing down the steep angle of the canyon wall on the opposite side of the stream. The twists and turns of the canyon are ever-changing. Sometimes, the canyon forms a scene reminiscent of a large downtown city street, with monolithic towering walls leading the eye off into the distance. Then suddenly, it takes a sharp turn just past a giant boulder that fell from an otherwise immovable mass of rock that still stretches up into the azure blue Utah sky. Now the sun penetrates this narrow chasm at more infrequent intervals as the walls continue to press in on the churning river. It's hard to realize that this magnificent sight is the result of a crack in the massive Navajo sandstone rock that occurred during some prehistoric era. That crack continues to be widened by the erosive action of this small stream that has flowed through the ever-widening canyon over uncounted centuries of time. Your attention is drawn skyward to the tops of these walls some 2,000 feet above the riverbed. Even at midday, wherever the depths of the canyon remain shielded from sunlight, a strange twilight barely illuminates the scene. Finally, one last bend in the river and the small stream coming out of an even smaller canyon, Orderville Canyon, joins the waters of the Virgin River. This point, just a little less than 2 miles from the end of the gateway to the Narrows Trail, is a good point to end a day hike. Beyond Orderville Canyon, the river contains deeper pools, some of which require swimming. Be aware of changing conditions. You are hours away from the start of the Narrows Trail at this point. Since most of the trip is in the water, travel in the same rocky stream bed means the return journey is just as slow as the trip upstream. Take your time, be careful, and enjoy. From the confines of the Virgin River through the Narrows, to the stunning views from high up the canyon walls, from a gentle path along the floor of a canyon, to a twisting set of switchbacks rising above the canyon below. Zion National Park preserves this wonderland that has been eons in the making, not only for us, but also for unborn generations that will follow. We are the stewards of this land. Use it gently. Use it wisely.
If you enjoyed this program, hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss the rest of the series.